Nope. Okay. So we're going to continue with load and review data. So what we're going to do next is we have to make sure that all the pay periods have been closed. And so what that means is you're going to need to have all pay periods up to 12/31 that they've been processed and closed in the payroll processing screen. If that has not been done, the system will not load the data. So to load the data, the steps to get to that is to go to HR Payroll, Processes, Tax Reporting, and W-2 Reporting. You'll notice here that there is a year of 2016. So you're going to want to make sure that you generate in order to close it. You just click on Task, Generate, Yes, and it closes that year and it allows the next year to be available to work on. Otherwise, when you click on 2017 and you click on Task to load, it'll be grayed out. So to load, you come to Tasks and you click Load and Yes. You notice now I have data within the 2017 year. We're going to open up that record again. And we're going to go ahead and generate the test file. That way we can submit it to AccuWage to make sure that the data file matches and passes the test before we continue moving forward with the rest of the reconciliation process. So you click Generate Test, yes, and it generates a test file for you within the VPN folder. You go pull that file and you submit it to AccuWage. This year, AccuWage is not a separate downloadable file. It's within the same website where you upload the W-2 data file. If you log into that website, it'll be the last tab and it says AccuWage. Okay, so I'm not going to actually log in and test the file since that's part of a different system. I'm only going to focus on Schoolability. So now the next step is we're going to generate some reports to help us within that for the reconciliation process. And to do that, we're going to click on Reports, Payroll, and I like to sort by report name, and I'm going to click on Pay 01. From here, I'm going to select 1/1/17 through 12/31/17. What this does is it makes sure it pulls in all the data for that calendar year. My preference is to generate by PDF, so I'm just going to generate as a PDF file. And this is the report that gets generated. I'm going to pull it off to the side so that way we can generate the rest of the reports, and then we'll come in at the end and I'll give you some ways that you can compare. The next report that we're going to generate is the Pay 05. This Pay 05 is a monthly tax summary, and it summarizes each, the gross wages and the applicable tax for each quarter. And again, I'm going to generate this as a PDF. This is the same report that is recommended to use for the 941 reconciliation. Actually, let me come back to that real quick because I wanted to show if you were implemented July 1, you're going to see a large amount in June. And what we did is we just did one import for January through June wages. So that's why it's broken out this way. Next, we're going to generate the Pay 12. And what this allows is the user to summarize information that's going to be reported in the box 14. So again, we're going to select 1/1/17 through 12/31/17. So each org may have different type of deductions that they want to include. For this scenario, I'm going to include the ERB, which is the retirement. And I'm also going to include Section 125, and I'm going to include tax annuity. So I'm going to generate as a PDF. And this report is going to give me a listing of all employees with the retirement, which is going to be this column, these two columns here, the Section 125, and any tax sheltered annuities. Next, we're going to generate the pay 27. This one is, in a sense, the W-3. And I like portrait, so I'm going to select option B, and I'm going to generate as a PDF. And this report will give you, make it a little bigger. This report will give you each box and what's going to be reported. So this column here are the gross wages. This is what was withheld. This section is box 14. And then over here we have box 12 with the code of DD. So it tells me there's 26 employees who are going to receive a W-2 statement. Okay, so now that we've generated these reports, we're going to want to compare this to the 941 reconciliation, or if there's another reconciliation template that you utilize when processing payroll. If you need a template, I can provide one to you, just for simplicity. If you haven't been utilizing a reconciliation template for each pay period, I'm just going to pull up one that was created to compare to the 941s. And so what this just has is each quarter with the applicable line going on each row, and then you have the W-3. So you shouldn't have any differences other than the Medicare tax or the Social Security tax, because it's a percentage. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm just going to compare this report here, and I'm going to make the screens a little, I'm going to make the reports fit within the screen so that way you can see what I'm comparing. And of course, you can develop your own process, but just some ideas that you may want to consider. Okay, so from here, the first step that I'm going to do is I'm just going to add in these amounts for the retirement. Oh goodness, I bet you it's because it's, maybe because it's, maybe because it's scrambled data, it's not pulling in the matching numbers. I don't know. When I did the reconciliations for the school that I handle, the numbers did tie. So the retirement here should tie to the retirement here. Let me just look at something real quick. So that's the only explanation I can give right now, sorry. But this number here, section 25, 125 does match. However, with that said, if you do see a difference, which sometimes that can occur, there is a piece in here that talks about how to fix those errors. Then I'm going to go ahead and click on a different report. And this one is the FIT. So we're going to look at FIT first, which is over here. So this 369, hopefully it's large enough for you to see. And the withholding. So those two tie, these tie over here, and so forth. And then this one was the PAYO 1. And again, you can see that they are tying out to the amounts that we have here within these columns. And then the employee side, withheld. I think it's the, I was looking back at this report here, so I'm just going to tally up this here. I might have an error when I generated the pay 12 report. So this is something that we would need to look at further to see, to verify that this amount here is accurate. So this is one way to say, oh, you know, it's not tying out. What would be the next step? Let me give you an example of, or an idea of how to pull that data if you come across any differences. So there's one other report that we can pull. And this one is the pay 27. Actually, the wrong one. It is the give me a second. It's a pay 26, sorry. No. Oh my goodness. Yes, it's a pay 26. So here we're going to mark tax year 2017, and we're going to mark X for, that's going to give us raw data. We're going to click go, and we're going to click Excel data. This is going to give us a summary or raw data of each employee and what was deducted. So what we have here is raw data. However, I do have a template that I will be emailing out. I'm waiting for the file to open. Okay, here it comes. Okay, so within this data file, we're going to click on this data tab. And in this data tab, it already has data in there, but I'm going to delete it. So that way it clears out what was entered before. And then here, I'm going to go ahead and make sure I'm in A1, click on Control A to select all, Control C to copy. And then I'm going to come to that tab, make sure I am in A2 and then click Control V. It is going to include the header, so I'm going to delete that by clicking on the row and a Control minus. And then there's these extra fields, so I'm just going to highlight that row and click Control Shift down. So it selects all those rows and a Control minus. There's other ways that you can go about doing those same tasks. That's just the way that, that I like to do it. So I'm going to click here on Summary, and I'm going to refresh. And then it gives me, it refreshes the pivot tables that I've already generated or created and then it's going to bring in it's going to summarize the data that was saved within the data tab. So from here, you can actually look at each box and compare it to the employee, and this can help with some research. Okay, so those are some of the reconciliation steps or the reports that would be used in your reconciliation process. Again, you may have some internal controls that you put in place to help with that. And I'll open it up to any questions now. Okay, so we'll move on. The next step is fix errors. And I am recommending that you refer back to the instructions manual to fix errors. I'll go over a couple of those pieces. If you do have any errors that are encountered during this reconciliation process, the first one way that you can correct them is creating a manual payroll. That way it's reported within the correct box or within the W-2. And then you're going to need to reload your W-2 data. Or another step is after you've printed, you can unprint and make a manual change to one of the W-2s. The unprint and manual change is easier, but there is that option that you can correct the errors by creating that manual payroll. So really that's all I'm gonna say about fixing errors at this time until I get to the printing and submitting, and I'll show you how you can unprint to correct an error within the W-2 record from from that activity. Are there questions on the fix errors before I switch to the printing and submitting? Okay, so printing and submitting. So we're saying at this point, everything looks good. We're ready to generate the final reports if there were any changes made from the initial generating of the reports that we just went over. If you don't have to regenerate those reports, then the next step is you're going to print the W-2s. So to do that, you're going to come back to this processing, tax reporting, and W-2 reporting, which is right here. You're going to open up that year's record. You're going to click on tasks, and you're going to click on print employee forms. At that point, you're going to have the W-2 generated, which is this statement type. So you'll have 4 to 1 page for one employee. You do want to make sure that this is correct, so I do recommend some spot checking just to make sure. However, if on that summary report that we just did, you can actually spot check from here too, because it breaks out the retirement tab. So you should expect that these employees here would have that box marked with an X, and I mean this X right here. Another way is if they have a retirement amount, they should have this X marked as well. Now, the next step is you've printed them. I usually just click File and Open in Adobe Acrobat so you can save this. Because once you close this report, you'll have to click back to print again from this screen. But this allows you to save the file as a PDF. Okay, so you printed, everything looks good. And then after you discover that there was an error that needs to be corrected, what you can do at that point is you can come, I'm going to close this activity. You'll come to Processes, Tax Reporting, and Employee W-2. Click Go. Then you'll see that all of these records or all of these employees have a statement printed for them since it has a date. So if I open up this employee's record and want to make a change, they're locked. So in order to make a change, you click Tasks, Unprint, yes. You reopen that record. Oops, wait, let me go and refresh. So now notice that there isn't a date. So you reopen, you click Tasks, and you click Edit. Oops. Oh, I forgot. So sorry about that. In order to edit this, and it is part of the instructions, you actually need to close the W-2 data. So we have to generate before we can actually come back here and edit. I'm gonna not go over that process right now. You can follow the instructions in the instructions manual, but basically after you do that, you'll come over here to Tasks and Edit, and then you'll be able to edit any of these fields at that point and then reprint. From this menu, you can also print the employee's statement from this activity. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to mark this as printed. So that way, let me just see if it didn't print. So tasks, print employee form. Oh, okay. So I have to do that from this activity. So I'm going to open this up again. I'm going to click Tasks, and I'm going to click Print Employee Forms, and it'll only print the one that is marked unprinted. And this is the only one, so it's page 1 of 1 that will be printed. And so now all of them are marked as printed. So there's 26. After you've printed them, the next step is to generate. So you're going to click Tasks, and you're going to click Generate. What this does is it generates the file for you in the VPN. It is saved in the VPN folder. You'll go pull it. I do recommend viewing that file just to make sure it is correct. And when I say correct, I usually view the employer information and the contact information. Then you will submit that through the Social Security website. The deadline for submittal is January 31st, as well as providing these W-2 statements to the employees. So you want to make sure that you try to, that you actually meet that deadline to avoid any penalties. And that is all I have for now, and I'll open it up for questions. Okay, doesn't seem like there's any questions. However, when you're working on these W-2s and you encounter a problem, or if you have any further questions, please feel free to reach out to your customer support, and we'll assist on making sure that it is addressed timely, so these statements are issued out to the employees and Social Security. Okay, I think that's it. I'll go ahead and end the webinar. Thank you.